The land, the animals, and the people. Welcome to the Wolf Connection Podcast.
All right, a reminder for anybody who's listening or hopefully watching this one. I think we'll have it up. Our first film in the Wild Roots series is available on the Wolf Connection YouTube called A Handful of Dirt, featuring artist John Potter. We have another film in the works that is going to be featuring Jeff Reed of the Cry Wolf Project. So sign up for Wild Roots, go to the link in our bio, Wolf Connection Pod, and you guys can, stay up to date on everything that's happening. So watch A Handful of Dirt. It's up there. I think it's been up for about a month or so, and really just get involved in the extension of the work we're doing with the podcast. My guest here is coming from LaPorte, Colorado. She's the founder, CEO, and the mechanical engineer of GuardUs Innovations. She is Carolyn Johnson. Really excited to talk to you today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be here chatting with you. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm glad I really revisited my emails because you had sent something probably over a year ago, and I was scrolling through and I was like, let me reach back out to Carolyn and see how things are going. And this is how this spawned this conversation. So we'll get into sort of the tech and the mission behind GuardUs, but always like to start talking about where you grew up, what your connection to the natural world was before we get to this point. So what was that for you, Carolyn? Were you a native Coloradan? Where did you start?
Yeah, so I grew up predominantly in Maine. My father was in the military, so the summers were the wild card, so kind of all over the place. But I would say my roots are Maine, and grew up with squirrels and fox and trees for neighbors, pretty much. So always really felt connected to nature and very much at home in nature. And meanwhile, I grew up in a hunting, fishing, agricultural community as well. So there was always that other level of connection. So, yeah.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in that area? We've seen a lot of people that they're drawn to nature because they have family members that are hunters or anglers or outdoorsy. What was it? What kind of influence did that have on you? And when did wildlife become important to you at that young age or sort of in your formative years? When did that sort of switch for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it a switch. I would say I was born with a chip in my head to really care deeply about animals, any animals, wild or domestic or otherwise. That has always been the case with me. I've always had a very, very soft spot for animals to kind of a ridiculous level. It's any strength to the extreme becomes a weakness, and it might be a weakness with me. But I really have always cared. Yeah.
And then I was, believe it or not, I was actually born in Maine, and then I grew up in New York. So I'm an East Coaster myself. What was the draw to the Western part of the country and to get, and whether it was, a natural move or whatever circumstances happened, it seems like many of us gravitate to the more wild places or quote unquote wild places or open spaces than sort of the urban settings where we grew up in. Was that similar for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I did one 3-day weekend here, early in my 20s. I was 24 at the time. Did a ski trip to Telluride with some buddies. And my mind was blown. I just thought, okay, this needs to happen. And immediately. So I thought, okay, I'll do the responsible thing. I'll get a proper job. And that took more than 3 hours. I was like, I'm just going to move. It'll work out and it'll be fine.
Yeah. No, sometimes those are the best things is when everything sort of comes together and you just sort of do it and you're like, all right, we're going to make this happen no matter what the issue is. You spent, give everybody a little bit of background in engineering and mechanical engineering. I would say to everybody what exactly a mechanical engineer does, because I have a couple of engineers in my family and I still don't wrap my head around exactly what that type of profession is. So how did you fall into that alongside sort of your love of the outdoors and nature? How did those two sort of coincide with each other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I that you're making me realize I take for granted that people understand what that means. But yeah, to your point, I don't think many people probably do. So my background's a little non-traditional. I actually have a biology degree. I was pre-med. I took the MCAT. I was going to med school, and then ended up meeting a group of mechanical engineers and just asked them a lot of questions. I'm like, you guys are enjoying your 20s. So I was taking note as opposed to being in residency and whatnot. So it was kind of a non-traditional path. But yeah, to your point, what is mechanical engineering? Well, pick up anything. I mean, pick up your iPhone. There's a ton of engineering in that. When you open your car, how does the door seal and the mechanism, the hinge, like all those things. And of course, to create a product like a phone, you're interfacing with many other types of engineers, the electrical engineers, who are making the printed circuit boards. I'm probably getting too technical, but all the things that make the electrons flow in the right direction, the software guys. But yeah, the mechanical is really what you're going to pick up and touch and feel, pretty much.
So it's throughout our everyday lives. Everything that we do, there's something mechanical engineering around it. Like you said, doors, things like that. Is it as simple as that? Like you said, doors and cars and things like that. Those are
your computer, your refrigerator, every appliance you have. Absolutely. All that stuff.
Yeah. Is it in theory problem solving for you? Because we'll get into that as we get to the coexistence part of it. But it seems as though mechanical engineering seems to gear towards the problem solve. How do we get into the thing we're looking to do, or how do we seal the thing that we don't want to be taken or to keep us safe, right? Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all problem solving. And yes, you have to operate within physics, of course, but there's so much creativity. I mean, you can solve a problem 10, 20, 100 million different ways, right? So I would say it's akin to woodworking. I mean, do you want to create that hole with this tool or that tool or a drill press? I mean, there's so many different ways to do things. But yeah, it's really creative. Super fun.
It seems that way because you've created this innovation, this technology that we're going to get into about trying to problem solve and try to resolve conflict. With that background that you have, engineering, product development, all of that stuff, what drew you, I guess, to the issue of livestock, predator conflict, and sort of the issues surrounding that? Did it coincide with your move to Colorado? Was it looking at it from afar and saying there's a problem that needs to be addressed? How did you come to these sort of avenues where you're at now, which we'll get into?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, this will dovetail into the answer to your question, but I ended up going to grad school for mechanical engineering, so master's in mechanical engineering, and then, like you said, a career in product development. What opened the door to be able to have the luxury to entertain this whole thing? So I started my own consultancy, so freelance mechanical design engineer, about 8 years ago, right? So I've got a variety of clients. I get to pick my own hours. I pick where I do the work and who I work with and all that kind of stuff. So I had this luxury that's a little bit different from a standard 9-to-5 job, right? So that was kind of the backdrop of why I was able to do it. But yeah, I mean, I have this great consultancy. I work for great clients. I do super fun projects, predominantly in aerospace or med device world. So yeah, how did I get to livestock? It's an excellent question. So I was watching this PBS special about the return of the wolf in Colorado, and I was so impacted by it. And the folks listening haven't seen it, the short story is it's a synopsis of how the wolf reintroduction is going in Colorado. It's from a myriad of different views of vested stakeholders, to include ranchers and conflict mitigation specialists and wildlife biologists, sort of the full gamut. So as I was watching this, and especially seeing the ranchers and the peril and the distress and folks saying, this just isn't fun anymore. It's so stressful. And then specific accounts of kind of the horror that they have to go through, right? We have a new apex predator and it's a real thing. It deeply impacts a lot of people. That was a Friday night that I watched that. The next morning I got up and I was like, I need to fix this. I was so impacted by it. And I just thought, there are a lot of people working on this whole coexistence initiative, and how can we safeguard livestock and therefore wild natural predators. And yeah, so the short story is I spent about 3 solid months building this incredible community, and I'm still building, but of vested stakeholders and trying to understand, well, what are the tools we're using today and what's working and what are the opportunities for improvement. And what I found was the tools that are out there are, antiquated at best, right? It's, it's range riders who, as humans, we can't hear or see or smell well, especially at night. We can't be everywhere all at one time. And not to pick on range riders, but I could go through the full list, and I just thought, wow, there's a major opportunity here, and the economics support non-lethal mitigation tools. So yeah, why don't I use my gifts and my background for the good of the world, right? Like yes, I can design and fabricate high volume injection molded disposable plastic stuff for med device companies that end up filling the landfill. And how great do I feel about that at the end of the day? I really don't, right? So why don't I look at the intersection of my talents and my skills and my passion and drive forward there? So kind of a long answer, but yeah, it's a total passion project for me. I feel really strongly about it. And I think the technology that we're developing has all the potential to be very impactful.
Before we get into the actual technology itself, what did you see from your background that maybe others who have been entrenched in this issue for 10 years, 5 years, however long, what were they missing that maybe you as an outsider or as a different sort of skill set able to see that maybe others weren't?
Well, I think it's just someone coming from my perspective, right? And I don't, I think if you put 10 mechanical engineers with my background in a similar spot, you would have some really great ideas and very different, of course, from what's currently out there, right? Because this is an industry that is deeply steeped in tradition, and it's not necessarily a community that is immediately adopting tech, right? So and I've talked to a ton of ranchers, and I told them, when you have a problem, when there's a new situation, how do you solve that problem? And the answer predominantly has been, well, I talked to so-and-so neighbor and so-and-so family member and see what they've done and what works. So if it's not an innovative new lens perspective, then, it's like if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So yeah, I think more than anything, it's just the lens that I have is why I'm seeing these opportunities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And from your website, I pulled this because it's so great. GuardUs states that concern over livestock losses resulting retaliation against wolves helped inspire the company. And you, Carolyn, saw an opportunity to help bring human interests in wildlife into a better balance. When you had those conversations, or are having them still to this day, between ranchers, livestock producers, and wildlife advocates, where are people missing each other? What's one thing that you've seen? I'm sure there are many, but are there one or two that really stick out that maybe, the main concern from either side that maybe nobody's catching that you're seeing from?
Yeah, I think, the answer to this question is kind of, why are people missing each other on any issue? in politics or in the world. I mean, I think it comes down to, it's really easy to get into an echo chamber and just just be siloed with your opinions, right? It's difficult and challenging and uncomfortable to reach to the other side, as a rancher, to sit down with a wildlife biologist or whomever and, hey, let me understand your perspective, right? Especially when you're hurting. I mean, these ranchers are really hurting. They're frustrated. They didn't vote for the wolf reintroduction, and yet here they are having to deal with it, right? There's this whole social divide of, well, who voted in the wolves? The cities. Who's dealing with the wolves? Our rural economies, right? So there's, yeah. And from the other side of the street, I think it's really easy for folks that reside in metropolitan areas to turn a blind eye to what's happening out there. They checked a box on a ballot, and that's kind of the end for them. It doesn't affect their daily lives. So what are they missing? I think it's humans missing each other. I think it's lack of understanding, it's lack of empathy, it's lack of time and investment. And I don't want to put everyone into the same box. I mean, I've definitely talked to ranchers who, I mean, if they're willing to talk to me, they're not so deep in their silo, right? So, I mean, there are folks there, but I think it's really easy to get angry and hurt and just start throwing stones. So
yeah, and that's the last thing anybody wants to do is throw those stones. Do you think coming at this from an engineering perspective, you can approach this problem differently because you're here to solve the problem and not necessarily get muddied within the waters of what's happening already? Is there a different mindset that you have that others don't, where your brain goes? When you, like you said, you watch something, I have to fix this. So where does your brain go in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started this project, I thought, well, this is fantastic because, there's a real tangible problem that I believe we can meaningfully help. I'm not going to say 100% solve. And this technology, I mean, it's going to be great. If we save livestock, then there'll be less reason to put wildlife in crosshairs. So the wildlife wins. And this is just, this is going to be great. This is going to be taxpayer money, all the things. What I found getting deeper into it, it's just a less rosy picture than that. Just because, there are some folks who really don't want wolves in the landscape, and anything that's going to help them exist, even if their interests are protected, that's not their agenda. And I'm not going to say that's the majority of folks for sure. But that is one perspective out there. From the wildlife perspective, yeah, I mean, there's tons of groups. I mean, Rocky Mountain Wolf Project is an example where they're really vested. Yes, they helped of course, the initiative of bringing wolves here, but they're really vested in protecting livestock in the ways they can. They've been, generous funding our projects. So I haven't so much seen that from the wildlife perspective, but yeah. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. Yeah. I think it's good to have, I think, a fresh perspective coming into these debates, because we've talked about this for over 5 years about the wolf, the wolf influence, the conflict, the things that happen, and to have sort of a fresh perspective of someone who's not maybe fighting the main battle, but looking for a different innovation or a different tool to help these things along and to have, as you say, coexistence and balance in the same place and compromise. It's always nice to hear that. So I guess without any further ado, tell people in so many words, sort of how does the system work or the innovation from GuardUs work? What's the tech? How does it sort of go across the landscape or help in this scenario? So what does the technology do for those that are listening?
Yeah, good question. So the fresh perspective is I'll tell you a little story about that, which will dovetail into the answer to this question. So there are folks in academia that are studying wildlife conflict and non-lethal tools and what can we do, I would say there's a major gap between the great findings that is in scientific literature and the tools that are developed and on the ground, right? And I've been really fortunate to specifically connect with Stuart Breck at CSU, who's spent decades doing large carnivore research and, developing non-lethal tools and all this stuff. So I think part of the fresh perspective is taking some of the gems that are buried in paper, right? And giving them life and bringing them to the field. So specifically, Stuart, he has this, to me, it's a wonderful paper that the summary is basically, if you can combine 3 characteristics, you can expect to enjoy an order of magnitude greater efficacy with your non-lethal tool. So I met with Stuart, discussed the technology. He and many other folks have helped curate my direction. But yeah, the 3 things are proximity. So to help deploy something very close to predators it's psychological warfare, right? So we're going to get into the tool in a minute. So it's psychological warfare to scare and dissuade predators. So proximity, unpredictability, they can't see it coming, and adaptability, which means it changes over time. So the only non-lethal tool we presently have that checks all 3 boxes are drones. But drones need pilots, and you need to know that there's a problem, and there's other limitations, including how much they cost, right? So yeah, after coming up with a whole bunch of ideas I was really excited about that were horrible ideas. But hey, you got to start somewhere, right? So the short story here is that this is a livestock worn collar that detects predator presence. And once a predator has been detected in close proximity, the collar will either make a noise or a light, right? So it's a visual or auditory deterrent. And the whole thing is, you're not going to deploy the same deterrent 2 times in a row. There's pretty much endless novelty with it. You can upload a new soundtrack, for example, or a new visual blinking pattern or whatever remotely. So yeah, the whole idea is to collar livestock. And so you have something that is providing 24/7 surveillance and can autonomously detect and deter predators. And yeah, while wolves are certainly the thing that have a lot of our attention, there's a bunch of other predators too, right? There's mountain lions, bear, and coyote are everywhere, right? So the whole idea is to confer protection for a variety of livestock species against a variety of predator species.
So when with this thing is able to adapt, the adaptation is from the human side, meaning it uploads different, we upload different songs, sounds, whatever it may be, and that's sort of the adaptability within these environments. Now, how does it work for the livestock or whatever's wearing this collar when they hear these sounds, see these lights, things like that? What's the reaction that's happened there? Or what's sort of been the test runs, and how has that worked out for those animals, knowing that these things come on?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. The whole idea is to scare predators and not livestock, right? You don't want a strong flight response with sheep. Next thing you know, you've got scattered and lost and injured animals because of your technology. So yeah, the stimuli are carefully curated to do just that, to not be scary to the wearing animals, but to be maximally scary to predators. So how does that look? So things like human voices, that's really scary to some predators, right? Things like tractor noises, even just a soundtrack. Lights. So what testing have we done? So we did some on-animal testing last summer, looking at, this light pattern, this audio track. what is the reaction? And in that case, so we were looking at sheep, and there really wasn't a reaction from the sheep. I mean, they just didn't care at all. And again, I mean, there's one of the soundtracks is barking dogs, for example, but we were careful not to get the really growly, like attack dog, more like the alarm barking. The great news was that the livestock guardian dogs were immediately on it, right? They were like, whoa, what's going on? Which is perfect. It's a perfect response.
The Wolf Connection podcast is now sponsored by our new partner, Jacques-Marie Mage. This LA-based brand is known for their limited edition, handcrafted eyewear and luxury goods, but also for their stewardship program, which supports various nonprofits and individuals who are working to protect a future for wild wolves.
So does it coincide then with, if somebody has livestock guardian dogs, does it initiate their response then too? Or did you see that as something, or is that a hope within this technology that if they're using the barks, for example, when they detect a predator, whatever it is, coyote, mountain lion, bear, whoever, whatever, that'll, in a sense, alert the livestock guardian dogs from wherever they are, and it'll sort of create a double response of actual live animals protection along with lightened sensors and things of that sort.
Absolutely. And in ranches where you have a patrolling range rider, for example, a person on a horse or ATV or whatever, patrolling the area or just in the area, if they hear or see something from the caller, then yeah, I mean, it helps bridge some of our deficits as humans and helps us key into what's going on. And it helps reinforce the meaning of that deterrent to those predators.
Are you able to track or plot where these collars are in relation? So if you're a range rider per se, and you're out riding, or if you're a rancher that's with their flock or whatever it may be, is there a way to know where, like pinpoint exactly where this is? Or is this to help? Obviously it's to help. If they're hundreds of yards away, let's say, and you can't get there in time, this is to help deter it. But is there a way to map out sort of where the collars are, where these animals are, so that you can sort of identify maybe problem areas where you need a little bit more defense, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. I should put you on the innovation team. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want to know when, where, what is going on with our animals, right? I mean, there's these, just to lose one animal even, it's a loss. You're losing potentially a reproductive cycle. You're losing the meat. I mean, it's the impact on your grass without the benefit, right? So yeah, I mean, the whole idea is, of course, autonomous protection as primary, but secondarily, if you are within proximity, I mean, the whole idea is like, you can get a notification on your phone, hey, you got a problem and it's here. And if it's 2 a.m., you get to decide like, oh man, that's a 40-minute ATV ride both ways. Like I can't do anything. Or if you have a little ranchette and you have all your 5 goats are named, right? And they're right outside your window, your reaction might be different. Right.
And it's giving sort of the autonomy for these large scale operations or these small scale operations to see what they would do. Why do you feel, or how do you feel as you go along this process, why this is a game changer as opposed to some of the things that are out there? I know you sort of named a couple things prior with, having drones and things like that. What technologically or monetarily even makes this a step up from where we are right now in terms of non-lethal protection and coexistence within these conflicts that are happening?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, all these other deterrents, I have mined the literature in depth regarding what is the effectiveness of range riders, because anecdotally, there's this idea and there's a confidence that yes, they help. I couldn't find anything in the literature that substantiates they actually do help. I've talked to conflict mitigation specialists who have said, they're great at identifying carcasses, right? They can see the carrion birds come in, and that's helpful, right? Because then you can catalog, document, and get your reimbursement for depredation. But I don't know how, and I'm not going to say there's never been a saved life from a range rider. That would be ridiculous.
Right.
So it's a big question mark. How effective is that strategy? It is quite expensive, right? Livestock guardian dogs, unfortunately, can pose a risk to each other, to hunters and recreationalists and shepherds. They can destroy non-target wildlife. They are very expensive. There's a lot of maintenance with them. There's training. They can unfortunately depredate the animals that they're trying to protect. So while I do believe they are helpful, there are downsides. And again, they can't be at all places at all times. You have dogs that wander and go to the ranch next door. They're very much free range animals. And then in terms of our technical tools, there's a Fox light, which basically is a coffee can size light where it's automatically on at night. It looks like cop car lights from afar. And that can be effective for a period of time. But these predators habituate. They get comfortable. They can approach at their own comfort in their own time. And ultimately, they realize that light is something to ignore. There's sound devices, right? Like your critter getters, which is just a motion activated sound. Well, predators like the wolf, they figure that out and they just go a different way. They go around it. There's turboflagery, which is basically electric fencing with red flags on it. That's incredibly expensive. It takes a lot of maintenance, and you have to take it down within 60 days because, again, wolves habituate and realize, okay, we could just go around this or go through it. And it really doesn't work for other predators outside of wolves.
So when you're looking at this, because there's part of like the AI informed system to deter predators. So how are you marrying some of these technologies that are out there with yours in a way that, how does it detect, or what's the range, I guess, of where, if cattle are out grazing or sheep, whatever it is, what's sort of the distance, or what's the thing that triggers the collar to make these sounds, to make these lights? Because if all these other coexistence tools we have work to a point, what's the difference for yours right now that's going to set it apart, that allows these things to be triggered, alert the predator or deter the predator, and then allow the cattle and the sheep to keep doing their business?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So it detects a physiologic disturbance within the wearing animal. So in layman's terms, it detects a fight, flight, freeze response. So you have to have not only a very close distance between the predator and the livestock, but the livestock need to feel threatened. And at that point, that's when you get a deterrent deployment. What's
sort of if you can name the trigger, and please get as scientific as necessary, I think we're good with it. Is it a tensing of the muscle? Is it a jerk reaction? What's sort of the thing that initiates that fight response? Because I think we as humans have that differently, animals have that differently, but what's the thing that triggers the collar to do what it needs to do in that response? Yeah.
Good question. Yeah. So it's about movement. It's about movement. It's about changes of movement. It's about what your neighbors are doing. If you suddenly have a dispersion event or a clustering event, that is meaningful data. So if you have livestock guardian dogs, for example, they'll have collars. Their movement, their activity will feed into the intelligence of the system, and it gets smarter over time. So day one, you may have some false fires, you change the sensitivity, you change some parameters, and you dial it in, right?
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay, and then is this all this information, as you said, if it's learning over time, where is this data kept? Is there a system that comes with the collar? Explain that. I imagine there is, sort of like a home base or a computer that's logging all this data day by day. How does that information get from the collars to whatever the data entry system? Is it every collar has to come? I imagine you don't have to take every collar of every animal, but how does that get logged? And is it able to be read in layman's terms for those that want to use this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the callers communicate, they'll send information up to the cloud. And then it's, there's big smart computers and we chunk through data. So there's a database. And then through the database, that's how you understand. That's how they're called machine learning algorithms. They get smarter over time. But yes, basically from the caller, data goes to the cloud. It gets processed, and then you'll have something very human readable on your phone, on your tablet, if you choose, right? So you can engage with that as little or as much as you want. The other part of this, which is just definitely a tangent, but I have looked at rancher profit margins and labor costs, and I'm looking at these two lines, and as I'm getting deeper into this, I'm just like, man, if we can't figure out how to do more with less, then I just am concerned about their future. So not in phase one, but ultimately, I really want to give the rancher actionable insights such as lameness detection and fence breach and theft and those sorts of things. Certainly location, right? That's not a hard thing to do. But yeah, there'll be a suite of data for them.
Yeah. And what does that expansion look like outside of the collar? When you're talking about fence breach and things like that, are you talking about sort of a camera system? What's sort of the next phase, I would assume, outside of the collar to be able to give that full umbrella of data that you're talking about? What's sort of, if you can speak to phase two? I know we're only in phase one. I don't want to give you more to do.
No, I get excited too. I'm just like, let's talk about it. No, it's a similar thing as a virtual fence, right? So there are companies like Fence and Halter that have collars that, you can draw on a map your property. Like, I want my cows to be contained in this area, and you can change that. So I'm certainly not trying to get into the virtual fence world, but the technology is certainly there and it's ubiquitous. Dog collars, and it's not proprietary. You can just draw a fence on your, in your electronic map. And hey, if my sheep breach this and they're heading down I-70, I-80, whatever, like, I need to know this.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah. It seems like there's there's so many different things that can come from this. If you were to look at it from your perspective, from your innovation, what is success look like at this point? And I guess to tie into it, when you're looking at reductions in livestock loss in terms of, depredation, and specifically, because this is really what it seems to be doing. I don't know if this can impact the other things that happen, which is weather, sickness, all these other things. I don't believe that's what this tool is for. So in this instance, in this specific instance, how could it fundamentally change the conversation in terms of how much livestock loss as it depreciates? And what does that look like for success in that way?
Yeah. So the question is around what sort of effect are we looking at to deem this as successful? Yeah. This is another thing that I've looked through the literature and I've talked to other folks in academia because I'm like, well, how do you gauge success? And they're like, if we can show a statistically significant reduction in depredation, that's successful. So it's an interesting question. I would love to say, our target is obviously as much as possible. I would love 100%. I know that's completely unrealistic, right? And I think the data is just going to show, right? Like how effective are you? And there's a lot, as you know, there's tons of factors. Have these, for example, wolves been around livestock before? Are they habituated and do they now have a taste for livestock? Out in California, they really struggle because there are question marks about the natural prey base. Is there sufficient prey to sustain wolves? I mean, they have a heck of a time with keeping them off livestock. And I think, I mean, with sort of the more dedicated packs, dedicated to livestock packs, I should say, packs of wolves, I mean, you might have to come in and really teach them the meaning of what the collar means, right? So you might have to have a boots on the ground crew that when the collar goes off, you come in and you haze wolves or whatever predator that's coming in to really teach that animal what this means. There can be other animals that have more skittish predators who have a very flush prey base where you don't need to do anything. So there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I guess, something that we can talk about is technology alone enough to sort of solve this coexistence challenge? Because this one it's been run through the ringer. And obviously, I think many of us, I won't say all, obviously, many of us want to be able to have this wild landscape, to have this coexistence. I think that is speaking from personal experience and obviously not being a rancher, but understanding the plight of where we are in terms of our public lands, in terms of the safeguarding that some of these big ranches hold to our wild places in the West. Is this something in your mind that can at least, I don't know if it can alone solve this issue, but do you feel it's going to be a meaningful step in the right direction for coexistence for non-lethal?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, if you look at the data of there's a graph that I can see in my mind right now. If you have a predictable static from afar deterrent, the efficacy it's tiny. And then, if you combine these three factors, proximity, unpredictability, adaptability, it's a 10x improvement. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't wholesale believe this could be really impactful for a lot of people and animals and ecosystems, I would just go back to my day job, right? But proof's going to be in the pudding,
Yeah. I mean, what for you, obviously, how do you, because it's funny, like what you just said leads right into what I was going to get into is like, how do you balance this optimism with realism? Because I think we get stuck so much in the realism aspect of it of, man, things just really suck in certain instances in life. And when we're trying to fix a problem, and I don't know if your brain goes there, if you're like, I'm so optimistic about this, and then if it doesn't, like you say, I might not hit 100%, but if I hit 90%, am I going to be, realistically happy about it? How do you balance that in your specific brain in the way that it works? Because it works differently than others who have, like I said, that are ranching, raising livestock, and others that are trying to conserve wildlife.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I can tell you, and this goes into your other question from before, what does success look like? Well, I mean, I'm living so aligned with my passion and my priorities that I'm already successful, right? Like I get to look back on my deathbed and say, I gave it my best shot. And even if this thing never, I don't sell one unit ever and never saved one animal, it's already successful in my mind, right? So I know it's kind of on the order of, I just started learning how to garden and grow food, and I was talking to my mom about it. And I was like, it's so exciting. And if I get anything I can actually eat, that's just going to be an amazing bonus. So, I guess it's just how I'm wired. And, I want to, if I can come out of this with my husband in my house in that order, right, then it's successful.
Yeah.
I know it's probably a really low bar, but that's,
But it's good because to me it shows that obviously you're in it to make meaningful change, and that there is obviously this background of loving the outdoors and growing up and having this love for animals and nature, and it translating to people on both sides of this equation, which sometimes I think doesn't happen for everyday folks. We have our narrow focus about whatever, as we said, silos, and I don't like to get into politics too much or any of those things because it doesn't really feed our souls the right way. But the way that you're talking is translating that optimism from I love wild things and animals. There are people that shepherd animals, and there are wild beings that need to be deterred from possibly being killed by us because they killed something that we're stewarding. So I applaud you for translating that optimism to that. I mean, what would it mean if coexistence became economically beneficial? I think this is something we've gone into, but I think you're on the precipice of if this thing works, if GuardUs works, you're not only saving, I think, the animal itself, but if the trigger response is saving animals from running off weight, which also I know impacts livestock and sheep. What if this is, the little investment or the investment that it is in GuardUs economically benefits us instead of becoming painful? I mean, that seems like that's at the root or the heart of what you're trying to get to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many indirect losses, like you were saying, reduced weight gain, pregnancy losses. And I mentally, psychologically live in a world where, yeah, we can have our cake and eat it too. I think the economics are absolutely there to make sense, the return on investment for the rancher. The economics are absolutely in place for me as a business owner to make money. There's significant potential, right, to save animals, both domestic and wild. I don't see, and this is what I think a lot of people miss. They're like, I'm not really livestock, don't care so much, or, wild predators, whatever. And I'm like, let me tell you why you care. Let me tell you how much money you as a taxpayer pay to reimburse ranchers and to pay for non-lethal tools. And yeah, the economics, it's like a lot of ranchers, not in every state, certainly it's a political thing, but ranchers they can pay 0 to 50% of non-lethal tools. And you have natural distributors built in with conflict mitigation specialists who buy these tools and deploy these tools. So it's not like you have to build trust with every siloed rancher, right? Like it's zooming out, looking at it, it's like, yeah, I just see all green lights. And I keep looking for red lights, right? Because if there are red lights, let's just stop now. But yeah, I think it's a pretty optimistic future.
Are you looking to, once you have, obviously it starts to be, made and distributed, where are you looking to begin sort of the initial phase of distribution? Are we starting in Colorado and phasing it into different places? You mentioned Northern California, which I think could benefit from this technology. I'm sure there's other places, Montana, Wyoming. The list goes on and on in the West. What's your distribution plan look like from this point? I know things are patent pending, correct? For the technology. Yeah. So do you have a timeline? Do you have because you see it, like you said, you see green lights. So I could see you probably getting up every day like, all right, is today the day? That's what you seem like,
Yeah, I will say this project has been an exercise in patience as well, right? Because, the fundraising piece, that's a whole expertise that, I'm learning. So innovation is slow because I've been bootstrapping or self-funding predominantly with some help here and there. But yeah, where am I going to start? My relationships are in Colorado, predominantly. I've got folks all over the place, but if we're going to talk about have your cake and eat it too, I'm trying to connect with some First Nation communities, some Native American folks, just because I feel like they'd be, I mean, and they do have agricultural interests. These are communities that have always understood that we have just one, the earth isn't ours, right? Like we are part of a larger tapestry, an integrated picture, an ecosystem. So from a, what is the word? Alignment of perspective, I think they would be such a natural fit. But yeah, I mean, without a better answer, I mean, I would say probably Colorado because my relationships are here, and then First Nation folks. But we have predator problems in every state, right?
I mean, I think we have issues that need to be sort of adapted to. That's how I look at it, is that we as a society, or we as a species, have really changed the landscape, depending upon your outlook, for better, for worse. And it's how do we sort of reconnect ourselves back to a more natural setting, a more coexisting setting. And like you said, we're all part of the same tapestry, this large ecosystem. And so how can we sort of balance our needs with the needs of the wild species that keep this planet ticking and keeping the things going? And that might be too woo-woo for some, but I think there's a way to get there so that we can sort of balance these things out. For you, if you're looking way in the future, 20 years from now, whatever, if it succeeds beyond, Carolyn's wildest dreams, what does the landscape look like in your brain, if you can rationalize that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's the picture I hold pretty much daily. Yeah, it's just a picture where we were able to keep livestock safe, right? That's the foundation, because it's like ranchers, they put so much time and energy. They have so many things to deal with. The hours they put in and the stuff they have to address on a daily, it's onerous. I mean, it is so much work. If we can make their lives easier, I mean, I think it's more work to go out and shoot predators, and trapping is okay. I don't want to get into that. That's a whole other thing. But in Colorado, it's illegal, right? So, the landscape looks like protected livestock and a thriving ecosystem that is balanced, and there's just harmony. I mean, it is a woo-woo thing. It's just everyone gets along.
I think that's what we're looking for, is just to find more tools and to have innovation from outside places, trying something different in a way that's going to be able to really get this problem or get this issue in a way that's affordable, distributable, and helpful for everyone involved. And I think it will hopefully bridge some of those gaps between folks that you were saying in these conservation spaces, ranching spaces, and biological spaces, to say, okay, if we have a tool such as yours, along with maybe something else that comes down the pike, and it combines, we're like, hey, we're doing pretty good here. We can actually go about, pulling our scientific data. People can have their ranches, and on some level, have public land, be in the trusted hands of those that know how to steward it, along with Indigenous community buy-in. How is that going? I mean, this is like one of my last things for you is, what is your outreach looking like right now? You talked about getting involved with Indigenous communities or just other communities at large. What does success look like in that arena, and trying to get buy-in from everyone there? What are the steps you're taking to get to buy-in and ultimately backing from multiple communities?
Yeah, that's going to be a whole effort on its own. I do have an amazing connection of an individual who is deeply connected to a lot of Native American communities. So that's great. I mean, he's like, okay, what ranchers do you want? What states? So I think once I mean, I'd love to do some testing in those communities. That would be amazing. So once I've got something, the technology is a little more mature and something to kick the tires on, then I would really kick that effort up in that community building. So, yeah.
And so I just got a couple more things for you. So for anyone who is looking for, say, a timeline, I know things, patents take a minute and all that stuff, obviously, and making sure where is the best way that they can go to follow GuardUs along this journey? If they want to learn more information, connect with you, talk about maybe there's a rancher listening right now and they want to know about this technology, or anybody in any group wants to learn more about this, what's the best way for them to get involved, speak with you, or find out more information?
Yeah, great question. So they can go to my website, which is GuardUsInnovations.com. There's a newsletter that's a periodic publication of where we are and how things are progressing. Sign up there. There's also a way to shoot us an email. So any inquiries, information, collaboration possibilities, certainly open to any and all of it. So yeah, GuardUsInnovations.com.
Perfect. My last question for you, Carolyn, is when you hear the word wolf, what's the thing that comes to your mind?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I think of just sort of the epitome of wild. What is wild? Well, it's a wolf, right? I mean, I've been to Yellowstone. I've never seen a wolf with my own two eyes. And I should change that at some point. But yeah, it's just a wild creature that I don't think is bad. I don't think is good. But I do think is just wild. Yeah.
Love it. I mean, thank you for explaining everything that's going on. Excited to see this come to fruition for you, not only for the hard work you're putting in, but also for anybody who wants to find, like I say, solutions, compromise, innovation, all of it. I think this is a good start. And it seems like I said, I hope for green lights all the way for you to make sure that this comes to fruition. Thank you so much for having this conversation and informing everybody who's listening about what you're doing. This is great.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor, and I really appreciate the spot that you made for me. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Just hang tight while I sign off here. How's to all out there? We'll be with you next time. Bye, everybody.
Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer. Thank you for listening.